Hi, I'm Stephen Rodneski from GetRealOnTaxReform.info. Please check out the video titled Sharks, Cash, and Capital Gains to get the proof regarding how the long-term capital gains tax break has been turned into a giant loophole for the super rich. The vast majority of Americans are level-headed enough to know that barring a lottery windfall, they aren't going to accumulate massive wealth. So why do they keep identifying with and tacitly supporting tax policies that overwhelmingly favor the super rich? Simply put, they mistakenly believe that the policies are in their own best interest. There's a good reason for that. For most Americans, there is one, maybe two chances to grab a relatively large chunk of change during their lifetime. One, after scrimping and paying a home mortgage for 30 or 40 years, they have a nest egg, hopefully, that can be liquidated to help support their retirement. And two, millions of small business entrepreneurs who spend decades building their business hope that they can sell that and add it to their savings and retirement fund. However, our federal tax code only looks at a single year of income when calculating the taxes due. Under the current screwed-up version of a progressive tax system, the average American can suddenly find himself facing the same tax rate that a person earning $240 million a year is supposed to pay. So a solution was developed to tax long-term capital gains at a lower rate. That seemed fair, except that long-term has now been defined as just over 1 year. So in 2008, over 63% of all long-term capital gains savings went to the super rich, who make up less than 1/4% of all tax filers. And that's only one of the ways that the tax laws have been skewed in favor of the super rich. It is one of the reasons that in 2008, of the $8.2 trillion of adjusted gross income reported to the IRS, over $1 trillion of it went to those few super rich. Chapter 7 of my book, Conning the Rich, The Great American Fraud, covers this topic in more detail. Some of you are cheering. Good for them. Screw the government. You might want to keep in mind one fact. As a greater share of income and wealth has migrated to fewer people, and the tax rate paid by those people has shrunk, an increasing share of the tax burden has to be picked up by the taxpayers in the $50,000 to $500,000 income bracket, or temporarily added to the deficit like politicians have been doing for years. Check out the video titled The Truth is Right Here to see what I mean. It's time to repeal the capital gains tax loophole and replace it with a much simpler plan. Allow each taxpayer to set up short-term deferred income accounts. These accounts would function similar to tax-deferred retirement accounts, except they would, of course, have a much shorter time span and be restricted to low-fee money market accounts that are run by commercial banks while regulated by the federal government. Up to 3 times in a person's life, when they have a year of uncharacteristically high income, they can set up one of these short-term deferred income accounts and place up to 75% of their income for that year in it. During the following 3 years, at least 33% of the starting balance must be withdrawn each year and added to the taxable income for that year. Let me give you an example. Let's say a family has a normal salary of $75,000, which results in a taxable income of about $50,000 after the standard deductions and exemptions. Then one year they sell a house or a business and get a profit of $450,000. Instead of paying tax on the entire $500,000, which would bring them up to a much higher tax bracket, they can set up and deposit $375,000 of it in a short-term deferred income account, which is reported to the IRS. That year, they report and pay taxes on the remaining $125,000 in their normal income tax form. The following year, they earn, let's say, their normal taxable income, plus they must withdraw $125,000 from their short-term deferred income account, so their taxable income for the second year would be $175,000. The following 2 years, they would deduct another $125,000 per year from the account and add it to their taxable income for those years. Once money is deducted from a short-term tax deferred income account, it must be added to the taxable income for that year. It can't be rebundled and deferred a second time. When established in the short-term deferred income account for a given year, the person can put in less than 75% into the account by keeping out and paying taxes on the larger amount. But they always must withdraw the required third of the account for each of the following 3 years. If the progressive tax system had not been hijacked by the super rich, we would not even be thinking of renewing the Bush tax cuts for people making over $500,000 per year. Instead, we would have an additional 4 tax brackets, one for those with incomes over $2 million, one for those with incomes over $5 million, one for those with incomes over $10 million, and one for those with incomes over $50 million. This would help provide the revenue to pay down the debt, which has risen in part because of the big tax cuts given to the super rich over the past 30 years, and give additional tax relief to the bottom 99.4% who make $500,000 or less per year. These additional tax cuts would ultimately pay off for the super rich as well once the economy rights itself. You want proof? Look at the chart behind me. In 1992, the super rich were only paying a little more than 26% average tax rate on their after-tax income, which was $1,261,000. President Clinton raised tax on the super rich in 1993. So by 1996, the super rich were paying an average of about 31%. Yet their after-tax income actually rose to $1,483,000. A better economy for all means greater wealth for the super rich. Then, in 1997, Congress reduced the long-term capital gains rate by more than 30%, which helped push the average taxes paid by the super rich back down to about 28% by 2000. And the average after-tax income of the super rich suddenly shot up to about $3,751,000. Greater tax cuts for the super rich can drive up their after-tax income in the short run, but starving the government and increasing the debt hurts the economy in the long run, which can't help but affect the super rich. Unfortunately, President Bush came into office and cut the average tax rate of the super rich again. The top rate dropped by 10%, and the capital gains rate dropped another 35%. By 2004, the average tax rate paid by the super rich was down to about 23%, but their average after-tax income had also fallen down to $2,345,000. All figures above are adjusted for inflation. We have a progressive tax system that has been gutted by Congress-enacted loopholes for the super rich. The lucky 13,000 filers who averaged incomes of $30 million each in 2008 only paid about 21% income tax. As we saw with candidate Romney, some making over $21 million were paying less than 14%, which is about the same rate as those making less than $200,000 paid. How is that a progressive tax system? I'm wondering how many Americans actually know what a progressive tax system really is. How else do we explain why so many of us are falling for the premise that raising taxes on the super rich would doom this nation? I know of one country that flourished and grew into a great superpower under the progressive tax system. You might have even heard of it. It's America. Yes, America used a true progressive tax system for 120 years, from 1862 until 1982, when President Reagan gave Congress the political cover to cater to the super rich and remove all of the upper tax rates from our progressive tax system. That action started a mad accumulation of wealth by the super rich and increasing unfairness in the nation's income distribution. By the way, before President Lincoln signed the law initiating the progressive tax system in 1862, the country tried a flat tax of 3% on all income over what would be equal to $18,875 in today's money. That experiment was a failure and repealed after 1 year. The opportunity to succeed in this great country is not just based on one's talent or ability to manipulate the system. The resources of a large, stable society, including a governmental infrastructure to protect intellectual and tangible assets, are an integral factor in the ability of the super rich to amass and protect their vast fortunes. But most importantly, the bounty of a stable consumer population to buy the products and services is key to great wealth. That is what made America a nation paved with gold in the eyes of the rest of the world. Of course, not all super rich are actively lobbying for greater tax cuts for themselves, but a powerful cabal has developed who believe that there is nothing more important than their unbridled accumulation of money and power. The more we have allowed people with such a mindset to infiltrate our political offices, the more entrenched these ideas have become. Just ask candidate Mitt Romney, who believes that the only thing wrong with him paying 14% income tax is that he thinks he pays too much. Super rich Leona Helmsley was vilified in 1981 after being caught saying, "We don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes." But her belief, the one she expressed, is widely held by some of the super rich. For politicians to give more tax cuts to the super rich while giving token tax cuts to the rest of us and adding the entire bill to the national debt is hastening the demise of our great nation. And then to turn around and feign concern for the burgeoning national debt while trying to give even more tax cuts to the super rich borders on treason. Thank you for your time, and God bless America.